Hi, well, welcome back to the show. I'm very, very excited today because it's our first ever personal response episode. Very excited. So, let me explain what I mean. So far on the show, you've seen me do character profiles for the various characters in the first book, so Game Changer. But you never really heard my actual thoughts and opinions on said character. The character we just basically just run through their appearance and who they are as a character. But today you're gonna get my actual thoughts. So in these personal response episodes, you're gonna hear my own feelings about said character. Okay. What I'll do at the start of each show is I'll remind you of the character, and then we'll get into it. So we're gonna start with Scott Hunter. So that reminds you about the character. Scott Hunter is the star centre and captain of the York Admirals, and the first openly gay hockey player in the Game Changers series. Scott is the protagonist of Game Changer, which follows his relationship with juice bar barista Kip Let. His decision to come out as gay by kissing Kip, his then boyfriend, now husband, after winning the Stanley Cup, is a landmark event for gay players in the NHL. Off the ice, he is an activist for inclusivity in hockey and co-owns the Kingfisher with Eric Bullet. And Scott is one of the few characters to either appear or be directly mentioned in all Game Changers books, making him the second most frequent character in the series. Okay, so let's get straight into my personal response, my thing about Scott. Now, I honestly, as you guys know, I absolutely love Scott and Kip. Okay, you guys know that. You absolutely know that I love those two. Okay, so obviously I'm gonna give them both a very favourable character piece. Okay, and I really loved the get go when we first meet Scott, and we straight away we established that he's gay, but he's not openly gay compared to Kip. Because obviously with Scott, he pretty much spends the entire of the novel literally as a closeted gay man, and we get to see the struggles, the strifes of having to manage being gay alongside his career. And I think those struggles, those strides, they are portrayed very, very well. And you can see that Scott obviously he wants to be a Kip, but at the same time, he knows what would happen to his career if he was to make this big, massive leap of faith. So I absolutely love how done this, and I love a lot of his personality traits, which I'm gonna just go run through you guys again. Okay, so we go. Right, so I just want to remind you of Scott's personality traits. So he is incredibly kind and caring, and we do see that portrayed numerous times throughout, like how he's always seems to be looking out for for the rookies or the young guns on the Admirals team. The fact he even goes to visit Frank Zula in his apartment after the whole arrest scandal. Obviously, sees to get put on waivers and ultimately leaves the Admirals. Yeah, and that just shows how big of a person Scott is, given how it's established very early on that those two don't get on. That's probably the only person that Scott hates. But good to show that he's a bigger man by that. He's also naturally modest. He's very, down to earth. He downplays his achievements, and he's kind of like a team player. Cause he doesn't really like winning individual awards, and yet we do see him win quite a fair few individual awards throughout the series. But he's more of a team player, so that's shown in his modesty there. and he's caused deeply generous, by donating extensively to various charities. Obviously, he visits hospitals, and obviously helps his teammates, and also, as we know, attends various charity galas, as we saw in the series. And of course, he takes his role in hockey of a leader very, very seriously, and he is responsible but compassionate at the same time, and is very well respected by his teammates. Not just them, also other players and officials. So yes, I really do love a lot of the personality traits that are in Scott. He's just a really nice, down to earth guy, and I feel like he's a role model for what you want to see hockey players be in real life. So I feel like he's an absolute real role model. Obviously, we got to talk about obviously his interactions with Kip, and we'll do the same on the next episode, because the next episode we're going to do my personal profile for Kip, so we'll talk about that as well. Make a note of that. Make a note of that. So we'll talk about how his interactions with Sparta. So I'm going to do Scott first. So I feel like with Scott's interactions with Kip, yeah, it's quite the way, and I just love how that relationship just blossoms from the get go. So when the two first meet, and it's kind of like awkward, because neither of them really know the other is or is not, and then obviously it develops further and further, and of course, the astounding thing for me, and the shocking thing for me when I was reading the book for the first time, was that Scott prefers to be. So I can't say this with a straight face. I'm sorry, I can't. It's because if you don't want fruity stuff, or just skip the next 30 to 60 seconds. What really astounded me was how Scott in the book is portrayed as a bottom rather than a top. I'm not going to explain that. Just Google it. Google it and then clear your search histories. I'm not going to explain it. Please don't. I'm not going to explain it, okay? Just please, if you really are interested, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you are keen to you want to know what that is, just go and look it up. But just please do then clear your search histories afterwards, alright? Even your video histories as well, just clear them as well. They're separate. Okay? Yeah, that really sort of astounded me, because you've got here this hunky, sexy athlete you think should be so full of masculine energy. You think he would want to be like the dominator of the relationship, not the dominated. But that really kind of threw me off when I first read the book, given how Scott's kind of portrayed as like this big, strong, sexy guy, very masculine. That kind of threw me off. But okay, each to their own. Each to their own. Okay, right. Okay. So that kind of, the first next scene that threw me off, and then as the rest of the book went on, I was like, okay, fine. If he first be that, fine. Okay. That's fine. Yeah, and I do love his vulnerability, and we see that a lot when obviously he's struggling to even be out and about. With Kit, they try to do some, actual dating, like actual proper dating in being output places, but of course you see that the stress obviously affects Scott there. So I just love that we do see a vulnerable side to him, as well as this hockey persona that everyone expects of him. And I do prefer his vulnerability more than his hockey persona. And I do love that we get a lot of good hockey content in that first book. So we get to really, see, how hockey is for Scott. What he's like as a player, what he's like as a captain, what happens in those high octane situations. I'm not sure how I would have felt if I was in Kip's shoes when Scott obviously takes that puck, into the chest, and that I honestly I don't know what I would react to if I was Kip in that position, because And as I was reading, I was like, oh no, I can see what's going to happen now. And then it's like, oh. And then one part of me, I'm thinking, oh, you idiot. And then the second thing, like, right, how can we make that better? Yeah. Anyway, yeah. But another vulnerable moment I really want to talk about is obviously the coming out scene, or should I say scenes? Because Scott basically, if you read the book, Scott basically gets 3 coming out scenes. The one with his agent, one with his teammates, and one with his coach. Right before we get to the kiss, which you could technically count as the 4th coming out scene. But is it? Is it though? Because I just look at the kiss and think that is just a display. These two basically proclaim their love to one another. I don't see it as a coming out. But anyway, yeah. But the one I felt was the most moving and the most emotional, and the one that I really wish we had got seen on the screen in the TV adaptation, was the one where Scott is in the locker room with his teammates and he basically tells them, and I was literally just welling up at that part of the book, because on the one hand I just really felt for Scott in that moment, but at the same time I would have just loved that to be a televised scene in the TV adaptation, so people can see that actually this does happen in hockey, you know. Because I feel Game Changer is more realistic to hockey than what Heat Robbery is. And I am going to do an episode where I talk about how I feel Game Changer should have been adapted, and what scenes I think should have been included and not. But anyway, that's for another time. That is absolutely for another time. But I just love that scene. I can already in my mind's eye, I can already picture how that would have gone down. As well. So that was a really powerful, impactful scene. I thought that was Scotland's most vulnerable. Yeah, but I just really love all every time that he and Kit spend together. I just love reading those bits, because it just feels to me, it just feels like so believable, and I just feel the emotion. I feel the chemistry between those two from the get go. So I would like to kind of also talk about the TV portrayal. Okay, now we're not going to do this for all of them. I think I would just like to do it with just Scott and Kip. Okay. Now obviously in the TV series, let me get the details. Let me just find it. Oh, there we go. Right. So in the Heated Rivalry TV series, Scott Hunter is portrayed by, and I'm hoping I've got this pronounced correctly. He's portrayed by Francois Arnaud, and I think Francois plays the character really, really well. Especially in that first episode where obviously Scott, Shane, and Ian are all this award night. Ian's nowhere to be seen. Shane's literally going to something, and Scott basically goes like, "So where's your boy Rose now?" And I'm thinking, little playful dig there. So it's almost like Scott's like worked out what we already see from early episodes. We always like, we all know. But obviously for Scott, that's obviously he's also a gay, so he can tell when there's potential. So he's got a good working gaydar, so he can tell when there might be some. Is there? But I kind of love that little playfulness, and I thought it was kind of one of the rare times we're going to see that, because I felt when we get to the Game Changer side of it for the series, we're going to have a lot more emotion and raw emotion. And I do love that scene where Scott and Kit, they're in his pub. It's literally just after they've had their sex scene. Two of them still half naked, so Give me more of that. But then obviously Scott has this emotional scene where he basically tells Kip why he can't, come out. And I think it's so moving, it's so emotional. I think Francois played that brilliantly. And then you can, and I felt he got the emotion right every time Scott had to be in an emotional state. Even even at the end of the episode where he's doing that speech, and the pain in Scott's voice because he literally just broken up. You see that pain in Scott was just wow. You see he's talking about that because he's trying to. It's supposed to be a good night for him and everything, but then obviously he's just had this horrible situation happen, and it's just yeah. So I feel Francois played the character brilliantly. So I'm hoping we get to see more. We did get to see Scott and Kit in season 2. I'm really hoping. I, at the time I record this video, have still yet to get to the 2 books coming in season 2. I'm not, and we'll see how it goes. I'm still on book 3. Nearly at the end. I'm halfway through book 3. And Scott does get and obviously Scott does get mentioned in book 3, so that's good. Obviously they're comparing a situation between him and Ryan Price, who's another gay character, and to compare that. That's good. So you get reference. There you go. Yeah. That's the only book where Scott gets mentioned. The rest, he is at least has an appearance in some form. That's the only book that he is just mentioned. The rest, he is very much in and in bold. So that's good. That's good. Yeah, but I really loved Francois' portrayal of the character. I felt he played it brilliantly, played it really emotionally, and I just felt that in the portrayal, and I just felt and it made me believable. That maybe connect with the character even more. Strengthen my connection to the character, and I just really love that performance. So so I'm not going to do it with every character. I'm just going to do Scott and Kit. I'm going to do their team portrayals as well, just to really hone in the emphasis on how I feel about the characters as well. The rest we just how they are in the books. Okay, just bear in mind. Yeah, but I just obviously love Scott's portrayal of the TV series as well. So I just want more from them. I really do. So I also So I did. So obviously of all the hockey characters, he is definitely my hockey husband. Come on, absolutely love him. And I just and I love how big of a role that he plays in the whole series. As a whole, because obviously what he and Kit do at the end of the book, that kind of then paves the way for the rest of the series, and we get to see these other relationships in books 2, 3, 4, and 5 play out, because obviously book 6 is obviously a sequel to book 2, but we get to see in the next 4 books we get to see these other relationships play out, and I don't think those would have happened if it wasn't for Scott. I don't think it would have happened if it hadn't been for Scott Hunter. So that is how big of a character he is. He basically is that pioneer who makes it okay for all these other hockey players to now, who are like Scott, to actually be out in the open. Even though obviously Shane and Enya don't get out in the open just yet. From where I'm reading, we do get to see these other relationships play out, and I felt that, and I just feel that you would not see those relationships play out if it had not been for Scott Hunter and what he did at the end of his story to then make it acceptable for these other stories to be told. So I just really loved it, and I'm looking forward to see what comes next. When I get close, gonna get to the lot books. Obviously, he's definitely up there. Him and Kip are definitely up there as my favorite characters of the series. Don't ever ask me to choose which one has got to be the all-time favorite. And I just love seeing him in in that jersey. So I'll go get it real quick. Sadly, we are still in a bit of hot weather, so probably gonna have to be September and get back into the jerseys. But I'll bring it out for you guys anyway. Just give me 2 seconds. it is. God, it's fallen on the floor. So my clothes do not work down their hangers. So bad getting clothes back on hangers. Right, here's. So for those of you watching, this is obviously Scott's York Admirals jersey. I absolutely just love this. Red is absolutely my colour. And I just love it. Should we show the back as well? There we go. There you go. Absolutely love this. And I felt, and obviously seeing Francois Arnold in that jersey. Oh, absolutely so sexy. No, but I honestly just love this jersey, and this logo is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. That's absolutely gorgeous. That's I absolutely love it. Can't wait till we get back into the autumn weather, and we can get the jerseys back on the program, being worn again. Can't wait for that. It's been hot. Right. Yeah, but this jersey, absolutely gorgeous, and seeing Francois, I'm just going to repeat again. Francois Arnold in that jersey was absolutely sexy, and I think we need to see Robbie GK in this as well. We need some scenes where, because obviously we saw obviously Rose Landry do it, in the show when she and Cher had their brief, whatever you want to call it. We need to, in season 2, we need to have a scene where Robbie GK, of course plays Kip, is wearing this jersey as a supportive boyfriend. So we need to see some of that in season 2. Okay? I absolutely love that jersey. So I had to obviously go get it out again for you guys to see it. Yeah, absolutely just love it. The Admirals, as I say, if you asked me to pick a team support, it would have to be the Admirals. Mainly because of Scott, but also that uniform is absolutely gorgeous. You know, and honestly, I think we can't go without talking about the kiss. Okay, I think that might well end things. Obviously, that kiss is such an iconic moment, and obviously for Scott, it's where he finally makes his choice, and it's like, right, I'm choosing Kip, and I will take the consequences no matter what. And I love how he's the one that obviously initiates it, because obviously he spotted Kip in the crowd, right? So he spot Kip is in the crowd, and Scott's the one that actually initiates the move and basically gets Kip to get onto the ice. So that just shows that it's Scott that really was it, and I think that just me shows the commitment that Scott is going to make to the relationship and make it work. So the fact that Scott will insist on making the move, that is absolutely just brilliant. So obviously it's such an iconic moment, and obviously when I read it in the book, and then when I saw it in the TV show, I was absolutely falling in love, because yeah, good for them, finally. No, it's what we're building towards. So yeah, yeah. But I just love how we get to see Scott's vulnerability. We see the trial tribulation that he goes through being a closeted gay man, and how that affects not only just his hockey career, but also his personal life, and also his relationship with Kip. And we see the strides that collide with, and how Scott handles them, his vulnerability, his compassion, just sort of things I just love about him. And who would have thought he would be a bottom? Who would have thought that? Who would have thought that? Who would have thought? Who would have thought that when you first laid eyes on him? Who would have thought that? Definitely not me. Definitely not me. That was a surprise for me. Absolutely, that was a surprise for me when obviously I watched when I read the book for the very first time, and I was yeah. And I also really love is how he and Kip literally care for one another, especially when it comes to the sex department. What I love about Kip and Scott, as Scott and Kip, which we want to put first? Who we want to put first? Where it's Kip and Scott or Scott and Kip. What I love about the two of them and their relationship is how when it comes to sex, they don't go full on myth, labba labba labba. and all that. You know, it's they actually care about one another. They're actually compassionate towards one another, and they even ask before they can fuck. So there you go. That's what we want to see in relationships. Ask before receiving. Okay, ask before receiving. That's what we need to see more in sex. Okay. So I just feel like their relationship is more compassionate than filth. So I think that's another reason why I prefer Scott and Kip's relationship to Shane E. Is because with Scott and Kip, I believe in them more. But yeah, but obviously Scott definitely out of all the hockey players, he's definitely my favourite. Obviously, him and Kip, they are equal footing. They're equal footing. I'm not going to choose between either of them because they're both equal. They're both one the same. Okay, so there we go. That is our first personal profile episode done and dusted. I'm so excited for that. So let's say we're going to do as many as possible. Okay, so we'll try and we'll do our best. See if we can do one for all the character profiles. That could be like a good balance, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, some characters don't get as big of roles compared to others. Okay, so that's why I can't promise that every single character I do a character profile episode for will get a personal profile episode for. Okay, so just bear in mind. So, yeah, obviously I need to do my boys first. So we've done Scott. Next episode, will be Kip, and then we'll take it from there. Okay. So that is going to be my thoughts on Scott Hunter. And until next time.